Welcome to Clear Vision Wednesday. I'm Claudia Mühlenweg, your host of this weekly show, all about vision improvement, eyesight, and how you can be healthy and feel good in your body. So today's topic is a very interesting one. We're talking about midlife and how we can transform our health in midlife. And I don't even know, I will ask my guest in a moment, but what does actually mean? Is it 40, 45? Like, where do you start? But let me turn on. Let me see. I have to grab the little spotlight icon. Welcome to the show, Natalie
Thank
Jill.
you. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So I was on your podcast and we started talking, and your podcast is called Midlife Conversations,
Yep.
right? And so tell us before we get even on into all the stories, like what does midlife actually mean? Like when does it start, age-wise?
Yeah, I think it's pretty subjective, but technically it's like over 38 all the way up until, 70 can be considered midlife. Doesn't necessarily mean you're living to 140, but it's that whole crowd that's after 38 basically. And there's a lot of us. And I'm 53.
You just look amazing. I mean, mind-blowingly. I'm 63. So usually, like I think the health that we do, all the work that we do from the inside really
Yeah,
shows on the outside eventually,
I
right?
agree.
But so when we talked, when I was on your show, you really were like your message was really you want to be your health detective. You really want to be, which I totally love because I say the same thing. Don't follow some guru's advice, but really figure out like what is it, what are your symptoms? But when we talked, tell us a little bit about your own vision
Yeah.
and
Yeah, so
how.
let me just back up a little bit. So I'm 53 years old and I started in about 17 years ago in the fitness space. And I was helping women get a six pack and get buff and all of those things. And I had started teaching that out of my own massive setback. I was a new single mom. I had gained a lot of weight. I was going through some major financial challenges in my life, and fitness became this outlet for me that helped me gain some type of control. And when I did that, I got known as this sort of fitness expert. Many people I helped with, back when we had DVDs, fitness workouts, and
Right.
I had books on fitness, and that was really my thing. And what I saw as I was aging and getting up into the late 40s, approaching 50, was fitness started to mean different things to me. So it was no longer important for me to go after the six pack or to help people get that. I felt like there was a lot more to it with our energy and how we feel and how we get through our day and how we achieve other goals with that. And it was interesting timing because as I was realizing this and having these epiphanies, I also was aging. And many of your listeners can relate to this, started having more pains, more aches, more circumstances, more excuses as to, oh gosh, maybe this is what happens. We get older and things fall apart. We need, as you know, we think we need reading glasses, all these things. So I fell into what a lot of people fall into, chasing that youth, chasing what I once worked for me, thinking I need to work out harder, I need to be stricter on my diet. And it really left me feeling defeated and falling short, and it felt very demotivating. And maybe you can relate to this, Claudia. Like this, it's just something that we start feeling with age. And it took me having some real setbacks, injuries, genetic things popping up, hormones shifting, eyesight changing. It took this circumstance, all these circumstances really becoming a tornado for me to say, wait a minute, let me relook at this. What do I want aging to mean? What should aging mean? And where does what I think I know fit into this? Or do I need to scrap it all and start over?
I can so relate to this. I mean, we were just talking about even recently, I did an Instagram reel. When you look,
Mhm.
when you text messages and all of a sudden the camera appears and you see
Yep.
yourself
Oh,
with
yeah.
this, like, you know, and I'm like, "Excuse me, what's that?" So I think we can all relate to that. And I can 100% relate to, my vision is obviously really good because that's what I teach, but also there definitely has been changes over the years, but even in
Hmm.
overall strength, like you said, I couldn't open the jars
Yeah.
anymore. Like, oh, it's just a really tight jar, or I hurt my shoulder and it just takes forever to
Yeah.
heal. So I can 100% relate to that. But
Yeah.
with me that with vision, you almost had your own blind spot, right?
Well, yeah, well, and I honestly still fight it, but I realized, I had you on recently, and just one example of I call it a self-imposed stop. or a belief around aging that stops us. So we've all sort of accepted, maybe not your community, but most midlifers have accepted we get older, we can't see, we need reading glasses. I
Uh-huh.
did. I fell into that. I didn't even challenge it. It was just became this truth. Like, I just need reading glasses. I interviewed you and opened my mind to a whole new way. Oh, wait a minute. We can retrain our eyes. We can correct our vision naturally. And you opened up this whole new possibility, which I'm not all the way there yet, but I have been wearing reading glasses a lot less. I've been challenging myself to like look at this and really thinking through the belief set. So you taught me another lesson that this is just a real life thing. So just like your listeners, your community is very aware they can correct their vision naturally. It becomes a new truth to them, right? Like it's not optional. They've decided. I want to say the same thing about your body and the same thing about how we age. Everything stems from a decision and deciding what we want to put as the meaning to that. So if you've decided that we get older and we get really thick in the midsection, guess what? We're going to get really thick in the midsection. But if we decided that that's not how we're going to age, we're going to be leaner, fitter, stronger than before, well, you might have to take new actions. You might have to learn new information. You might have to challenge your old beliefs, but that decision is going to propel you into that right direction.
Exactly. And it sounds like you talked a lot about beliefs and what I would think mindset, right? Like we just learned these things, right? We just kind of take it for granted. And like you had the blind spot with vision. I had a blind spot about, or I'm still working on it, like strength, right? I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
a story that was just so I stayed in Mexico for a few months, right? And I had my
Mm-hmm.
whole office there. So I came back
Yeah.
with 50-pound suitcases, right? Long story short, I stayed with my daughter for a few days. That was a long story. But so I could, like, I was like that 70-pound suitcase. I lifted out of the car and I could not carry that damn thing
Mm-mm.
upstairs. I can lift a 70-pound dumbbell, but because you
Right.
have to. So she just got them up there. She said, Mom, it's just normal, it's part of aging. I'm like, oh my God. That was like to me
Right.
the epiphany of like, this has to change. Like,
Yeah.
I have to
And the
do
truth is, it can be. We can just like we can accept the reading glasses, and I'm
that.
not saying there's a right or wrong. Like somebody might choose to accept the reading glasses. Somebody might choose to accept their strength is declining, but it is a choice and we have to recognize that. So I have no question. And I believe that you don't have a question either. Do you believe if you took different actions and believed that you could lift that 70-pound suitcase with ease, do you believe if you believed that and took different actions, eventually you could?
Exactly, 100%. I think, and that's where it all
Yeah.
starts. To me, there has to be an awareness first of all, right? Like I had gained a lot of weight in my midsection too in my late 40s. And then I
Mhm.
was like, then there's also this like, well, if you have a little bit more fat, you don't see the wrinkles so much, then you kind of make these kind of excuses.
Yeah.
And then you see pictures of yourself like, wait, what? You know?
Yeah.
So I completely revamped how I ate and how I moved and how I did everything in my late 50s. So like
Hmm.
that, like 6, 7 years ago, I
Yeah.
made a shift. But yeah, because I was like, this is not how I want to age. I don't, and it's not just the looks, right? I mean, the looks are also important. Let's face it. I think
Hmm.
for us, it's important how we,
Sure.
but also how we feel. You talked about the energy, how strong we are. Do we have to give up things that we can't do anymore, like lift
Great
things,
question. Yeah.
read things? So tell us a little bit about, I'm really interested in, because in the, especially when you go to social media, like the fitness, advice is so all over the
Of
place, right?
course.
So just lift weights, never do Pilates bar or any of this,
Hmm.
and other people. Like, what is your approach to like exercise?
Yeah. So let's start with when I look at aging well and thriving in midlife, there's a bunch of different buckets. And if you look at this bucket, the thing that's carrying the bucket is the mindset piece.
Mm.
And I want to explain that it's not just thinking positive. The mindset piece is being very clear on your decisions daily and how they affect you, and being very clear on something I call the FAT, which is false assumed truths. And these are beliefs that are no longer serving
All
us.
becomes
False
true.
assumed truth.
That
So
I
saying my eyes are declining with age and I cannot read anymore. That might be true, but it's a false assumed truth because the meaning you're putting on it is subjective. So I could say that statement, Claudia, you could say, yeah, I can see why you think that. I believe you need reading glasses right now. However, how you and I choose to take that information and live our lives is very different. I chose, I'll wear reading glasses. You chose, nope, let's help correct this and I'm not going to wear reading glasses. Same information, same data, same real thing happening, but we made different decisions, right? So false assume truth. So when it comes to our bodies, and I'm going to get to your fitness question in a minute, that first thing carrying this bucket is this belief set. And that's really important to understand. I know when women come into my Thrive program, for example, this is the first part we work on. I mean, we spend a lot of time here because if I can get you to shift your perspective on everything else is easier. Just like with you and vision, you've got to get them to believe first, we can correct your vision. You can give them all the exercises, all the things to do in the world. If they don't believe it, it's not going to work, right? So that's number one. Then we look at the buckets and I put them in order. I believe the next important thing is your nutrition. We have to eat foods that support us. We have to eat foods that help us thrive. We have to eat foods that are easy on digestion, that are easy on our bodies, that our bodies are going to use those nutrients to help us perform, to help us focus, to help us have energy. So that's primarily unprocessed, natural, real foods. Now, does this mean I never have a Reese's peanut butter cup? No, that's not what it means. What it means is the majority of the food that I eat and that I teach women to eat is natural, unprocessed, real food, fresh fruits, vegetables, proteins, healthy fats, good for you oils like olive oil, things like avocado, good fats. So we learn to thrive with that. So mindset, nutrition, then we look at movement. We have to move. A body not in motion will stay not in motion. Now it's up to you, the listener, how much you want to move and what you want to do. There's no one right or wrong way for us. What is factual is if we do not move, we will deteriorate. We will get worse. We'll get stiffer. We'll have more aches and pains. We will lose strength. That is real. What that means to you is, do you want to accept that or do you want to challenge that and work on progression and moving along so that doesn't happen to you? Sarcopenia, like losing muscle as we age, is a real thing unless you challenge yourself and you do progressive overload and you continue to challenge yourself there. So what's real with aging are these things. What we do with that information is our choice. It's our decision. So movement is key. And when you say like, what do I do? It's different for everyone. But the first and foremost thing is, are we walking? Are we moving? Are we moving and walking more than we're sitting? Most midlife listeners are going to tell me, no, they're sitting more. They're driving, they're working, they're on the couch. They are sitting more than they're standing, walking, moving. That's the first thing we got to flip. Most important thing. The next thing is, are you challenging yourself at all? And when I say that, going to your 5-pound dumbbells and doing 3 sets of 12 is not challenging yourself. If that's challenging for you, it is. But if it's just, you're just going through the motions, you're wasting your time. So we've got to think, what can I do to challenge myself? Does that mean I need to go do Orange Theory or something crazy? And no, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means we get to challenge ourselves. So those are sort of the beginning steps. After those steps, we look at other things. And this is where I talk about being a health detective. There's other things that enter into the equation in midlife that are critical to look at. Hormones. Are we optimizing our hormones? Do we have a decline here? And if we do, what's this creating in our world? Do we want to adjust this? Do we want to replenish? What do I want to do here? But being aware, we need to look at adrenals and thyroid, like what's going on there and how's that affecting our energy and our metabolism. We need to look at our gut health. I believe our gut is our second brain. Everything is processed through there. If we do not have solid gut health, we're going to have false readings on how we feel with hormones, how we feel with our nutrition, all of that. So gut health is another example, big bucket. But what I teach with midlife women is we start with that mindset piece. It's then the nutrition and the fitness, but then it's these other areas we've got to be a detective in.
This is so important. Talking about that, I call it the future self, or this idea of like, being the person you want to be and then taking action every day, because otherwise it's this nice idea. We do a vision board, or like, it would be so cool to look like blah. But right, the daily actions, and you're absolutely right. Positive thinking is not enough.
And either is a vision board.
Right. So having a like feeling that in your side, like how, I always like the Ken Clark and Superman in my case, because it's like, what's Wonder Woman's name? Oh God, Diane something. I'm not a comic.
Linda Carter.
Was it Linda Carter or
Diane? I don't know that's her real name. I don't know what her
But anyway, like they always in that kind of like small character, they wear glasses, right? And in their
oh yeah.
So right, to me that was always like this kind of
that's interesting. I didn't realize that connection, but you're right.
I think of
You're right.
a lot of times, studies have shown that people look older with glasses on. So, and I think when you're young, that might be a good thing, if you want to get into the
Yeah.
whatever. But as we get older, so I
And
love
just to be really clear, it's very real to have these age things creep up, and I'm guilty of it. I'm just going to
exactly.
share.
Totally.
So, like for example, I went 10 years ago, my social media was me doing all kinds of fitness tricks. I was upside down on the rings, doing pull-ups, chin-ups, like I did like some extreme fitness stuff, right? Now I'm can do like probably two pull-ups in a row, not even a chin-up, pull-ups in a row. Why? Well, I tore my bicep and had a surgery to repair it, and I've gotten older and I didn't practice as much. That's the reason. Okay. I could decide, you know, it's just my age. I'm 53. I don't need to do them anymore. It's not a thing. Or, and that would be fine. No one would argue with me. You'd say, yeah, you're
Right,
right. You're
right.
53. You did it. You could still do one. Girl, awesome. Or I can decide, okay, it might take me longer to relearn this. It might take me longer to get back to where I could do 10, 15. It might not feel good to want to do it. I might not want to practice it every day, but I could certainly decide to do it and get better at it. And I have decided that. Now I don't I'm might take me the next 5 years. I don't know, but I do work on it. So it's a decision and I recognize that it's a decision. I could also make a decision I'm never going to try one again and just let it go away and just say, "Oh, I used to do it when I was younger." So it's always a decision. And then I want to talk about, you just mentioned vision boards for a minute here. Let me talk about that. I hate the word vision board. I actually call them decision boards.
I
Decision
love
boards.
that.
Because
That's
if I'm
so
putting
good.
something on a board, it's a decision. It's not a vision, it's a decision. But here's what the important part that people miss on these boards. So you can't just put it up and it's like woo woo magic. I'm just going to look at it and absorb it and it's going to happen. It doesn't work that way. The way it works is you look at it, you feel in your body what that would feel like to achieve that goal, that feeling, that thing. You ground yourself with, I already have it. I'm already there. And you ask yourself, what do I need to do if I already have that? Like if that's me with that result, who am I today? What actions do I have to take? So if on my decision board, I put somebody without glasses and I say, I have perfect vision. I don't need reading glasses. Okay, if that's me on the board, what actions do I need to take today? Well, the action is to not wear my glasses. The action is to be in your course in your community. I'd have to do those things, right? That's how it comes to fruition. It's not just by looking at it and it's osmosis and it just happens.
Very powerful. A decision board. I've never heard this, but this is so true because dreaming is one thing, but actually taking the action steps. Okay, love that. So let's talk a little bit about fat loss, right? Because this is like, it's not directly related to vision. And I love that you talked about all the different buckets and really diving in. But how is your approach different than,
Yeah.
what we
So
see?
my approach is different because we layer this on top of this mindset piece. Now, there's a lot of people that coach and say, I do mindset. I'm pretty confident they don't do it the way that I do. I'll tell you why. People have tremendous success with me and all my programs and pay a lot of money to coach with me, to be and to work one-on-one with me for this reason. Because if I can shift how you are viewing your body, how you are viewing things, everything shifts with you. Everything shifts with you. So what a lot of fat loss, fitness, nutrition programs will do is they give you meal plans and they give you the workout. Great. Those are great. Nothing will change if you just do those things if you have not shifted your belief set around it. You'll do great on the program and then you go back to how you were. But if you can first learn to become a different version of yourself and operate from that place, then everything I teach you with nutrition, everything I teach you with workouts, as I open up the doors for you to become a health detective in these other areas, you're operating from a different version of yourself. That gets you different radical results. That's the best way I can explain it. The other component that I do differently is I don't believe that I have all the information. I don't. And I think everyone's very unique. So I could teach you amazing things about nutrition and workouts. But the bottom line is if Claudia, you are my client, for example, I got to know what's going on with your hormones. Like, is there something there that we're missing? And do we need to bring in an expert there? Is there something going on with your gut health? And do we need to look at that? Is there something going on with your stress levels? There's other components, and we sell ourselves short if we do not look at that whole picture.
And is that where you bring in other experts or how
I
do you
bring in
address?
all, yes, all my programs. Like when someone's in my Total Body Thrive, and I this is a community that I do, like you have your community. When they're in there, we do these layered pieces first. And then I have other experts. I always bring in other experts. I have my favorites that I work with there, but it's important that we look at all these components, and each person's different, and we go deeper with in those areas where we need to go.
Absolutely true. I do the exact same thing. And that's also one reason I do this show is really to, you
Yeah.
know, more because there's no, when I first got certified like a long time ago, I thought like, oh my God, I have to learn, I have to study optometry, I have to study all this, I have to take all these courses. Then at some point I'm like, no, like we can be very good, and that's what we are. We are experts in exactly what we teach, but then there's no way we can
Totally.
thing, right? Because then you're, what is it, the master of none or whatever
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Yeah. And I know enough to have the conversation, but I bring in Dr. Anna Cabecca when we're doing hormones. I bring in Dr. Amy Horniman when we're in thyroid. I bring
Right.
in Laura Frontero when we're talking gut health. I bring in the people that I know their stuff, and we'll go deeper in those areas.
That makes total sense. So I think I don't see any questions here, but I feel like what you talked about, like so basically you create a custom, like you look at all these factors and then it's more like a custom approach. So basically your clients first come with this kind of future self mindset, like this is
Mhm.
whatever that goal is. And it could be something like, for instance, I used to be able to do handstands. Then
Mhm.
COVID happened. And in my little house that I'm in right now, there's not enough space for me to
Yeah.
like, I use the wall, right? I didn't do them freestanding.
Yeah.
And eventually I just stopped practicing it, right? And now
Totally.
I tried it the other day. I'm like, I can't even get up. I can't. I'm like, so that is a goal of mine, for instance. Do you start with little micro goals like that, whatever that is, or you had the chin ups?
So most people that come to work, like I do take some private one-on-one clients at a higher level for this, but usually how people will work with me is in my groups, and that's the best way. And I have a specific formula that I take everyone through, but the formula allows you to self-diagnose and self scale. If that, so for example, you come in. You're thinking I've got 40 pounds to lose, and you're thinking I've tried everything, which is what most women say. I've tried everything. I've tried everything. Nothing's working. Okay, so we start at base one and we work on this belief set piece, and I do it in a sneaky way, so it's fun. No, it doesn't feel like we're not going back to your childhood or any of that. It's fun. We do it as a fun way. And then we go into nutrition. And with that nutrition piece, most women start to release and I say release because I don't want you to gain it back. So it's not a weight loss, it's weight releasing. We do that. As we're starting to feel better, release weight, we're having wins. I want everyone to have a win right away. Like, so that's important to me. Like, how do I get you wins week 1, week 2, week 3? We start getting the wins. And now I want you to go to that next layer. And that's when we start looking at these other pieces and figure out what to do there. Workouts are actually the last part. It's the last part. Now I get you moving right away as far as like walking and not sitting, but the workout component I feel with midlife women who need to release weight, that's actually the last part.
Okay, that was my own experience as well. Like with changing my diet like 6 years ago, that was the thing
Yeah.
because I tried it before where I isolated just exercising more and that didn't do
No.
anything. So, but in terms of like maybe give us some tips, like
Yeah.
how like some tips to get. And I love, by the way, that you separated movement from exercise because exercise to me is just a specific form of movement that we might do for 30 minutes, an hour
Yeah.
or less, but movement is something that we could somehow get into our day. For instance, I'm thinking of getting one of those. I'm standing right now at my
Oh yeah,
standing
like
desk.
a walking pad. Yeah.
Right, like what? So give us some. So basically, some people might be,
Hmm.
you and I are probably. We're spending a lot of time at the screen on computers, right?
Hmm.
We work online, we coach. So that's a different lifestyle than somebody who, can be has more freedom and can just go
Sure.
on. But give us some tips for someone who is more like
Hmm.
office or like,
Yeah.
being on a computer, because I think a lot of us are nowadays.
Okay, so the first tip I'm going to give you, and every time someone asks for tips, I know they want like actual do this, do that. And I'm going to go back to something I said earlier because it is the most important. The number one thing is you have to make a new decision. And here's the thing: we have every day, all day, we're making a gazillion decisions all day. From the time our alarm goes off or we wake up to what we're eating when we're making decisions all day long. You're in your car driving, you're deciding, am I listening to rock? Am I listening to worship music? Am I listening to a podcast? Am I listening to an audible? Am I going to call a friend? We make decisions all day long. So my first tip is start looking at your decisions. Are your decisions bringing you closer to your goal? or are they taking you further away? I'll
Ah,
tell you this morning when I woke up, I know darn well my decision should have been listen to an audible, meditate, get in your sauna, dry brush. But this morning I picked up my cell phone and I started scrolling. Okay, bad decision, right? I'm human. I do that sometimes. We all do that. But I have to recognize that was my decision this morning. As long as we can start looking at decisions, we have a key to change our lives. So I look at decisions all the time. I don't make perfect decisions, but I look at acknowledging what decisions I made and I stay accountable to that. So that's number one. The number two, the next thing I'm going to say is you start focusing on addition versus restriction. So instead of saying, I'm never going to look at my social media again, or I'm never going to eat sugar, or I'm never going to eat carbs, or I can't eat anything other than this. Instead of doing that, start focusing on what you're going to add in. It's a really fun little trick and tip to start moving in the right direction. So instead of saying, I'm not going to scroll social media today, I'm going to say, I'm going to make sure I listen to an hour on my Audible. I'm going to make sure I walk and listen to podcasts. I'm going to make sure I journal for 15 minutes. Those are addition. Same thing with food. Instead of saying, I'm not going to eat a donut for breakfast, you're going to say, I'm going to make sure I get in my protein right first thing. I'm going to make sure I get in my first vegetable. I'm going to make sure I'm getting in my healthy fat, drinking lots of water. If I'm still hungry, I'll have the donut, right? So it's an addition mindset. The third tip I'm going to give you is when it comes to movement, just think, how do I move more, sit less? Move more, sit less. Maybe that's standing. Maybe that's walking. I do a lot of walking, pacing. When I'm on the phone, I'll pace, I'll walk, I'll step outside. It's a lot of thinking, how can I move more? These are really old tips that you've all heard, but I just want to tie it together on why they matter. Think about even parking further. Like we've heard that, but are you actually doing it? I don't think you are because most people are circling around looking for the closest space. I don't do that. I just park and I walk. Me and my husband, we park, we walk. We don't look for the closest space. So it's getting that in. And the next thing is to really look at what you're taking in all areas. So when I say taking in all areas, it's not just what you're taking in food wise, it's also what you're taking in information wise. So what are you listening to? Who are you surrounding yourself with? Are you surrounding yourself with a bunch of friends that complain about aging? Or are you surrounding yourself with a lot of people that are positive about life, working on new goals, thriving? I could tell you, I have friends of all ages. I have friends in their 20s. I have friends in their 70s. It doesn't matter. The commonality is these are all people leveling up their lives, wanting something better.
very powerful. Now, I wrote them all down as you were talking, so I think that is so important. So I love the addition instead of restriction because when you add something, automatically there's less space or time
Mm-hmm.
for other things. And that's very powerful, a positive way to start approaching this. Move more. I think it's an American thing. As a European,
Oh,
born,
yeah, it is for sure.
what are people doing? Standing in
Yeah.
line waiting for someone to leave. I just blows my mind. I think it's
I
like,
noticed that in Europe when we had 2 trips to Europe this summer and just the amount of walk, it just felt so good. Didn't you? I feel more creative. I feel more energetic. I
I
feel
know when I
just
talk,
moving.
the same way I have to walk, or come, like I cannot sit still and have.
Mm-mm.
And so, yeah, I was like, the first time I was in the parking structure and then all the traffic is backed up because somebody waits for somebody to leave with this.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? Yeah, so move more. And I think that's when we look at the blue zones, a lot of, from Europe and
Yep.
Japan, they do gardening, they do like lots of movement. So thinking about everybody listening, like, where are things, I started drinking my morning coffee now, when I walk around the block, right?
That's
Maybe,
great.
but instead of just sitting there, and that way I can also not be on social media because I can't, so I realize it's for all of us. It's like we have old habits and making those changes.
Totally.
And I love what you said about what in all areas, because I think now that I'm in my 60s, yeah, I'm getting very like precious with who I want to hang out
Oh,
with
yeah.
because I can literally feel, and the holidays are coming up, right? And a lot of times, with friends, we can kind of close a chapter in a friendship. But when it comes to family, it's more challenging. And how do we
Yeah.
stay in our truth and not get sucked back into that whole thing? I mean,
So let me give you an actual real life example of this. I
okay,
have a family member that is a family member that I didn't talk to for quite a few years. Like we really butt heads. We don't agree on anything. Like it's like all the things that you're not supposed to, we conflict on all the things. And I made a decision a couple years ago that I didn't want that type of relationship, but I can't fix the fact that they might say something that doesn't agree with me and it would get me triggered and all of that. So it comes to boundaries, and this is how that works. This happened real time. I was on a flight and I landed off the flight. And as soon as I got off the flight, I had a message from this person, and it was hitting all the triggers. Like, and it was, we were talking about something medical. I'll just leave it at that. And
Yeah,
we
yeah,
do not
okay.
agree at all. And this is what I do for a living. Like, this is, I'm in this space of health. This person is not. Okay. So that's beside the point. But it was one of those texts that was meant to make me wrong and trigger and all the things. And my immediate reaction was one of two things: either fight back and blah, get all
Yeah.
upset and try to make this person wrong, or block and delete. Those are like my instant things. Like, don't respond, ignore, dead to me, or like I'm gonna fight back. We all have been in these situations. But I know my bigger intention is this is a family member. Like, this is not what I want in my life. So instead, I left a message and I said, I got your message. And I just want to remind you that we just have never agreed on this topic. And it's just not a good idea for us to discuss this topic because I want to save our relationship. So tell me what else is going on in life. That's literally, and it removed the whole charge.
That is so powerful. And I don't know if you know human design, but I'm an emotional authority. So I'm definitely somebody who's very, like, I get those things. And it's
Yeah.
like, actually, the family knows all our triggers, right?
Yeah.
So having that, I remember going through my divorce many, many years ago. It was over 20 years ago. And I always thought, whenever I would want it to be like, yeah, 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 I was like, I always thought, like, what if my daughters read these messages later? Like,
Oh, yeah.
I was
That's
like,
good.
okay, let's take a deep breath. How can I be respectful? And
Really
so,
good.
and they did actually read a lot of things later. And, they
That's
did
really powerful.
a bit. I'm like, okay, well, really, compared to what but
Yeah.
I love that advice, like really stepping back instead of just blocking or like, which is very, which is very human to do that, but really,
And if it's a stranger, you can. Like, look, a stranger on the internet, they're going to get blocked. Like that I'm not. But if it's a family member, what's the fight really worth? Because you're not going to I mean, politics is another huge example of that. Like, so
oh
many people
yeah,
disagree, right? But you're not going to make the other person all of a sudden go, you know what? You're right. Everything I've been saying is wrong. That's not going to happen. So what's the point of even engaging?
right. So we do have a question on YouTube, but that is about eye health, and you're not an eye doctor or an expert on this, but so we will leave that to another call about hormones and how it affects the eyes. So basically, yeah, I know that's not a question you can answer, but hormones, like all the things that you talked about, the buckets affect everything, and
Yes.
really finding out like what, like for instance, my readiness score on my aura ring recently has
Hmm.
been not good.
Yeah.
My at night my heart rate is up. I'm like, like my life isn't any like so. That's why it comes back to being the detective. Like, what has changed in the
What has
last
changed?
week? Did I sleep well? Like, what is going on? Like, right,
Yeah.
different. So I think it's just being really aware, and but also without going crazy. I don't know what your opinion is, and that would be my last question to you, Natalie, because a colleague of ours recently posted she did this extensive body scan where
Okay.
you get all the data about everything, and she said, I don't really know if I should have done this because I
Mm,
feel like I personally can, we can also stress ourselves about knowing so much that sometimes
yeah.
it
So,
actually
okay,
could.
I actually did. I know it's scan when you're talking about, and I actually did that scan. And I had to have a talk with myself beforehand. And I said, what's my intention for this? And my decision, you have to know what your decision is. Like, my
Uh-huh.
decision was, I want to be proactive. If I find out everything is great, then great. If I find out there's something terribly wrong or bad things or whatever, I am finding this out early and I get to take control and change it. So I was very clear on that. So if you cannot go into it not clear, like you have to know what your decision is ahead of time. And because you don't want to ever let circumstances dictate. So you have to, if you're going to do something like that, I think it's great. You just have to be prepared. Because the other flip side, she said to you, I wish I didn't know all this. But okay, so then what does that mean? She's in blind about it. And then in 5 years, it turns into full blown nightmare. Like that's not,
Right.
I don't know, if that's the answer either.
I think the decision piece is big. And we have a question here in my community that I think is useful for everybody. How to get motivated to do what you decide to do. Like, in
Yeah,
other words, like,
great question.
in all the different choices that we have, right? Like,
Yes,
how do we decide what we want to do?
I
Like,
love that. Okay, so there's an exercise I take people through in my Thrive method, and I call it a driving core motivator. And this is your reason behind the reason behind the reason you want something. And when you are clear on that and it strikes emotion, the behavior changes. So let me give you an example of what's not a driving core motivator. I interviewed Claudia. She told me that I don't need to wear these things, that I can learn some exercises and change, and I won't need to wear them. Okay. I did not look at my driving core motivator. I just said, it's easy to put glasses on. If that's my thought, how will I ever change that behavior? Okay. But if I go deeper on why this is important and I take that time to figure that out, that's going to make me change the behavior. So when you look at, like, let's talk about your body for a minute, your health. So let's say you decide, I want to release the weight. I want to feel healthy. I'm going to ask you, why do you want that? And most people's first answer is, well, I don't want to be overweight. Okay. That's not a driving core motivator. Why don't you want to be overweight? Well, I don't like when I go, I'm invited to do something and I don't feel confident in anything I wear. Okay. So when you're not confident in anything you wear, what does that do for your life? Well, then I don't want to go out and I'm not comfortable. And I end up just selecting some big baggy thing from my closet and it's always black and I don't feel good. Okay, and then what happens? Well, then I go to the party and I'm in the corner and I don't want to talk to everybody because I'm noticing how everyone else looks good and I don't feel good. And then I'm not having any connections. Okay, and then what happens? Well, then I'm miserable because some people that try to talk to me, I'm not really nice and I didn't make any connections. And next thing you know, I pick up the wine and I'm drinking a lot of wine and I'm overeating again and I'm feeling really bad about myself. Okay, and then what happens? Well, then I get home late and I didn't go to sleep at the time I wanted it and I start the whole cycle over again and I feel miserable. Okay, so what happens with that? Well, then I feel lonely and just disconnected. That's your driving core motivator. So when you can get to the root, and I just did that a very fast surface level example, but when you get to the root of why you want to stay committed to something, that's how the behavior changes. I can tell you right now, there's days that Claudia, I don't even know you, Claudia, I'm guessing, there's days you might think it might be easier just to freaking wear glasses. But you're like, I have an entire community that I'm teaching that they don't need that. That's your driving core motivator now. So we
absolutely.
all have them.
I don't have a desire to wear glasses, but my vision fluctuates like
Yeah.
everybody else's, right? And so when I have a lot of stress and I notice my vision gets worse, and then I'm like, you're absolutely right. Because now, like, I cannot just, it's like when you have little kids. This is another example when I felt like when you have little
Uh-huh.
kids, you want to binge eat that bad thing. But then, you know, now you have the kids and they would be like,
Yeah.
Mom, why can we not eat this and you can eat? So that's like sometimes, being a parent was also a great way to kind of keep you up to
Oh,
your,
yeah.
because, but we need to put these like in a way in a positive decision making. What you just walked us
Yes.
through was very, very powerful because that superficial motivator is not ever going to make us change anything. We really have to drill down
You
to
have
what
to
it,
know the why. You have to know the why that makes you
yeah.
cry. The why behind the why, like the real deep. As long as it takes an external coach to help you figure this out, but the behaviors will not change if we don't get to that root.
The why that makes you cry. That's also great. I love those. But it's so true because otherwise, when we have superficial things, we're not going to do it. I know that we all know that from ourselves. We don't
No,
have
we will
intrinsically
not.
that by something that's, and when I used to work with people privately and I would have discovery calls and it's like, oh, it's inconvenient, to wear the glasses. I'm like, well, inconvenience is that's not going to keep you from, right? So we had to drill down.
Totally.
And I think for some people, that's like you said, that example, you go further and further, and others, there's also this block when you're not really
Yeah.
ready. For some reason, then you put up all kinds of excuses why that's not possible. So we have to be willing, right? We have to be really willing to do the work. I think that's a,
Yeah. And that same example I gave about the woman that might feel uncomfortable getting dressed and going to a party. Well, you might feel uncomfortable when you're trying to put the jeans on and the cute top and go in those moments you're feeling uncomfortable. But when you're sitting on your couch and your big baggy clothes, eating comfort food, watching Netflix, you're not discomfort. You don't have discomfort right then. So the habit doesn't change because unless you experience that discomfort enough, you're not going to change the habit. But if we just avoid and because it's comfortable to sit on the couch in the comfy clothes, right? So you almost have to create this. I see how I'm uncomfortable right now, and this is going to be a lot better. And that's what drives the change.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, we have to do the work, however you want to call it. We have to start with the
Mhm.
beliefs. We have to be willing to dive deep into the root cause that you talked about that really, because I mean, I see that with vision. I'm not, and here's the thing, I always use fitness as an example because people talk about LASIK, which doesn't last, has all kinds of side
No,
effects, but that we always want this quick fix. But I always say, when they say, oh, is it eye exercises? For instance, I just give you an example. And I say, oh, so you think you can just do like a few weeks of eye exercises and then your vision is fixed? You would never think that about your body. You would
that's
not be like,
right.
oh, I go to the gym for 4 weeks and work out like crazy every day, and then my muscles are fixed and I'm done. Right. So,
It's
so somehow,
ongoing.
at least we understand that it's like, it's an
Very
ongoing,
true.
it's like vision. We somehow think that this idea of correcting or fixing, I don't really like that word because it's like JJ, my our friend JJ always says, like at the end, you're never done because it's like we work
Yeah,
optimally, we have goals, but at the same time, new things happen. Like I notice things take longer to heal,
that's
you over,
right.
right? So then also the patience to be like, okay, so what would be your last message in terms of, because this was wonderful. I absolutely love this conversation. So many gold nuggets that you shared. What would be the last kind of like message that you want everybody to take home?
Yeah, that last message I want you to take home is that you are one decision away from any new reality that you want. You are truly one decision away. Always. It's not one decision like that's the decision forever, but you always can make a new decision. So, for example, you eat the pizza and you didn't work out for the last 2 months. You can choose to stay focused on how you screwed up and this isn't working and my life sucks and I'm getting old. Or you can choose to make a new decision right now. Like, okay, that was the last few months. That was yesterday. That was whatever. But starting right now, today, this is my new decision. And then in an hour, when you're hungry and you make another decision, like I'm going to choose this. It's always one decision a way. We've never like thrown in the towel or completely messed up. It's just being focused on those decisions always.
Thank you. That was amazing. And lastly, where can people find you? I put some links into YouTube, but tell us a little bit
Great.
about connect
Yeah.
to.
So my podcast is called Midlife Conversations, and you can find me at Natalie Jill Fit on any social media except for YouTube. I'm actually Natalie Jill Fitness. You can find me there. And if you want a little more insight into my methods and all of that, we put some links there of a couple of free guides I have, which for my flat belly guide or my age optimizer guide, feel free to grab those. They're totally free. And you'll get just a little bit more taste of some of my methods.
Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful. And everybody, I forgot to say that in the beginning, follow her, subscribe to her, follow her on Instagram and all the things. So if that resonated with you, make sure you follow this channel. I always forget to say this, subscribe to this channel. We have amazing guests like Natalie on every week. You're gonna learn so much about how all these factors connect to how you see literally with your eyes, but also the vision that you have for yourself, right? And those decisions that you're making. So subscribe, click the little bell icon, and we see you next week. Thank you so much, Natalie. This was really
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Learned so much from you. And we will now have our little private conversation with my Clear Vision Club members outside of YouTube. So goodbye, YouTube, and we see you next